Hello, today I'll be doing a discography review, this time for the band Korn. So yeah, Korn was one of the first bands that I ever got into at a fairly young age. Korn and Linkin Park were pretty much the bands that opened the doors for me when it came to getting into rock and metal. So yeah, definitely an important band for me. Definitely a band that I'll always have a soft spot for or always have nostalgia for. But yeah, I never got the chance to see these guys live until I got to see them this year for the first time, and it was back in September, and definitely one of the best concerts I've ever been to. It was, of course, with POD and Evanescence. Definitely a great show, and yeah, let's go ahead and dive into this review. Of course, it all started with their groundbreaking landmark album, and that is the self-titled debut. So yeah, definitely a classic, definitely an essential when it comes to 90s rock/metal. I've heard an argument for Korn being rock, but I've also heard arguments for them being called metal. But for me, I'm not really sure where I land in that conversation, but either way, definitely a great album. It opens up fairly strong with one of their bigger songs, and that is the song Blind, a song that I still enjoy all these years later. You have other bigger songs on here like Chutes and Ladders and Clown. Chutes and Ladders being a fairly unique song for them. I do definitely dig the bagpipes in that song, something different. But also, I think this album has some pretty good deep cuts. I think some of the lesser known songs in here I think are really good. Some songs that instantly come to mind for me when it comes to that are Fake and Helmet in the Bush. Absolutely love Helmet in the Bush. Definitely one of my favorites on the album. But the album also closes off with arguably maybe their darkest song, and that song is Daddy. So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, Korn was one of my first bands, and I wasn't even into middle school yet when I got into Korn and Linkin Park. So yeah, I did hear Daddy for the first time, again, at a fairly young age, and from what I can remember during my first listen or first few listens of this song, I remember like I froze up or something like that. I don't think I cried or teared up or anything like that. I just remember just freezing up and being like, oh, just by being in like shock or something like that. Again, I don't remember a whole lot, but I mean, again, I was fairly young at the time. Wasn't sure what to think at the time after hearing that song especially, but either way, definitely a sad way to close off the album, but also a fairly good song too. But yeah, really great debut album for sure. Definitely a new metal classic. So next we'll be moving to their sophomore album, Life is Peachy, in 1996. And overall, a pretty good follow-up. Most people would probably say that it's not as good as the debut, and honestly, I probably agree with that, but that's not really saying much though, because I still think this album is still one of their best. So yeah, this was also produced by Ross Robinson, and yeah, really good album, really good sophomore album. Again, I mean, some of my favorites on here: Chi, Swallow, Good God, No Place to Hide is a contender for maybe being my favorite song on the album. Of course, you have the song Adidas, or Adidas. You also have their cover of Wicked, of course, originally done by Ice Cube, which features Chino from Deftones, another band that's one of my personal favorite bands. Absolutely love Deftones. But yeah, Wicked, I do like their cover. I think I've heard the original before. I'm only like once or twice though, but I do like this cover though. Mr. Rogers, kind of an underrated song, I'd say. Same with Swallow too, and Lost. But yeah, overall, another really good album from Korn for sure. Now we'll be moving to arguably maybe their biggest album or most well known, and that is Follow the Leader. So yeah, this album definitely a big commercial success for the band, especially with certain songs like Freak on a Leash and Got the Life. I mean, this was an album that I listened to a lot when I was younger, and I still enjoy it today. I mean, it starts off fairly strong with the opener, It's On, definitely one of my favorites on the album, and Freak on a Leash, while maybe one of their more overplayed songs, or, well, overplayed, I still personally still really enjoy that song. And same with Got the Life, still another really good song, but the lesser known songs, again, on this album are really good. Some of those being Seed and Reclaim My Place. I also like Children of the Corn featuring Ice Cube. I do think it ends off in a fairly strong note with My Gift to You, and kind of an underrated song, I'd say. I don't know if it's one of my favorites on the album, but still, My Gift to You, I still really dig that song, especially. Camel-Tosis, kind of an interesting / different song, but I do like it though. You also have the song All in the Family on here, which features Fred Durst from Limp Bizkit, and yeah, maybe a song that probably hasn't aged all that well. I know some of the band members have mentioned that they're not a big fan of this song nowadays. I'll admit the song is kind of a guilty pleasure for me. Now, by no means not one of the best songs on here, but again, kind of a guilty pleasure for me. And I'll admit I do like Limp Bizkit too. I am a Limp Bizkit fan. But yeah, definitely one of Korn's best, and a contender for maybe being their #1 best, I'd say, at least for me. But next we'll be moving to another album that I have a lot of nostalgia for, another album that I listened to a lot when I was younger, and that is Issues. So yeah, this is an album, this has to be one of my most played albums from the band by far. It has to be. I mean, I already lost track of how many times I've heard this album, but either way, another album that I think is one of their best. I mean, you have Falling Away From Me on here, which is one of their bigger songs. Definitely a great song that still holds up, I'd say. Trash and Wake Up are two songs on here that I think are really underrated. Especially Wake Up, which is one of the heavier songs on here. I really like that song a lot. Counting is another song that I feel is somewhat kind of overlooked in the album. It's towards the end of the album, and a song that's not talked about all that much, but personally one of my favorites on the album, actually. But I think the album overall has some pretty strong singles. Again, Falling Away From Me, Make Me Bad, which is maybe one of my favorite Korn songs, Somebody Someone, another really good song. But yeah, overall, really great album from Korn, and again, one of their best. But next we'll be moving to Untouchables, which, if I remember correctly, this is Jonathan Davis's favorite Korn album. Not my favorite Korn album. I mean, if I were to rank their albums, it would be towards the top 5 maybe, or at least one of their best. But again, not my favorite, but still really good album. I mean, many great songs like Here to Stay, Bottled Up Inside, which is maybe one of my favorite Korn songs, potentially maybe. Thoughtless, which is one of the fan favorites on here, another really great song on here. Alone I Break, kind of a different song on the album, but I do really dig that one also. I dig the heaviness of the song Beat It Up Right. But yeah, even though I would say this album is overall pretty good, there are a few songs on here that I think are somewhat skippable, I'd say. But besides that, still, overall, another really good album from Korn. But next we'll be moving to an album that is, excuse me, somewhat divisive. I know not all critics were into it, but yeah, this is also arguably maybe one of their heaviest albums, and that is Take a Look in the Mirror. And I have the version that has this as the artwork, where it just says Scrapbook. But yeah, personally, I actually do enjoy this album. This was the last album with Brian Head Welch, of course, until he'd come back sometime in the 2010s. But yeah, another album that I enjoyed. Not one of my favorites from the band. And now, if I were to rank their albums, it'd probably be closer to the middle, potentially maybe, but still, again, pretty good album. And I do like the heavy nature of some of the songs on here. Right Now is definitely a banger. Did My Time, maybe one of their best singles, maybe. I really like that song. Play Me featuring Nas. I am a Nas fan, so I definitely enjoy the song Play Me. Definitely one of my favorites on the album. Alive's another really good song on here. Everything I've Known, another highlight off of here. But yeah, I might have a few filler songs on here, I'd say, but still another really good album from Korn. Again, not their best, and also not one of their best, but still pretty solid album. But the things are going to start changing a little bit with their next album, See You on the Other Side. First album without Head, and definitely has a different feel to it. You have a different producer here. The Matrix, Atticus Ross, they helped produce this album. Also, I think Jonathan Davis helped with producing this too. But yeah, definitely a different sounding album for them. Also, it doesn't really sound like any of their other albums. But yeah, kind of a unique album in their discography. And overall, pretty good. Not great or amazing, but overall a pretty solid, pretty good album, I'd say still. An album that might not be for every fan. This album's not as, as dark, I guess, as some of their earlier albums, but still, Twisted Transistor, I really dig that song. Politics, kind of a banger, I really like that one. You do have the big song on here, Coming Undone, which they didn't play when I saw them, which I found to be kind of interesting, but Coming Undone, definitely a really great song. That was also one of the first Korn songs I ever heard. Liar's another really great song, one of the anthems on the album. Souvenirs and Hypocrites are a couple other songs on here that I do enjoy. But yeah, there are a few skippable songs on here though. Wouldn't rank this as one of their best, but still not a bad album though. Overall, fairly solid album. Next we'll be moving to an album where my opinions have kind of moved around a little bit over time, and that is the Untitled album. Kind of a bit of a more experimental / more different album for the band, and I'll admit this is one of my least favorites from the band, but even with saying that, the album has actually grown on me over time, because for the longest time I thought this album was just straight up bad. Besides having a few songs I liked, overall still was never really a big fan of this album until years later. Nowadays, I do like the album. Don't love it. Wouldn't rank it as one of their best, but still overall a good album. But I wouldn't say great or amazing though. But also I would say that this is one of those albums for me where you have a strong first half, but a weaker second half. But with the second half, Innocent Bystander, probably one of the best songs on here, and definitely my favorite when it comes to the second half, most likely. But Starting Over, Bitch We Got a Problem, Evolution, Hold On, those are probably the best songs on the album for me. But yeah, again, not one of their best in my opinion. I think they've done better than this, but still not a bad album though. An album that might not click with you at first, but I'd say give it more listens if you weren't into it the first time. Or if you haven't heard it in a while, definitely give it another listen, or definitely give it another chance. Next, we'll be moving to an album that I've seen being ranked towards the bottom for a lot of people, or at least in the bottom 3, which I find kind of interesting. But that is Korn 3, Remember Who You Are. So yeah, I agree. It's not one of their best, but with this album, they brought back Ross Robinson, and in a way, this album is kind of a return to form. But even with them doing that, still, I wouldn't rank it as one of their best. But it does have its share of highlights, though, like Oildale, Leave Me Alone. Definitely a pretty damn good song. Let the Guilt Go was another song that I listened to a lot when I was younger. I really like that song. Definitely one of my favorites on the album. Lead the Parade, another favorite of mine. Same with Pop a Pill. The Past is another song that's grown to be one of my favorites on the album. There are a few weaker songs on here, or some songs on here that never been some of my favorites in their discography, but there isn't really anything here that I would say is straight up bad though. But overall, a good album. I would say it is better than the Untitled, but still was saying that definitely not one of their best, not even their best when it comes to their more modern work. But next we'll be moving to an album that's maybe their most divisive album, and understandably so, and that is Path of Totality. So yeah, definitely their worst album for me. I'm sure it has its share of fans, but I'm not one of them. I just can never get into this album. Even around this time, when dubstep was big around the time, I was never a dubstep guy. I was never a fan of Skrillex and artists like him. So yeah, it's no surprise I was not into this album when it came out. I just have a few songs I like though. I do like Narcissistic Cannibal, which was one of the singles. I do enjoy that song. Get Up is another song that I don't mind off the album too. If you have the bonus track or special edition or whatever, deluxe edition or something like that, there's a bonus track called Fuels the Comedy. That's another song that I don't mind off this album, but yeah. Never been a big fan of this album. They decided to do something different, and overall, it just did not work for me. But at least it has a few songs that I don't mind, though. But next we'll be moving to the album where Brian Head Welch comes back in the band with Paradigm Shift. And I remember when this album came out, I was really into it. But with saying that, this is another album in their discography where I'd say it has a strong first half but a weaker second half. But the second half does have its moments, though. It does have its highlights, such as Punishment Time, which I think is hands down one of their most underrated songs. Punishment Time, absolutely love that song. Definitely one of my favorites off here. I remember Never Never was the first single off the album, and definitely a bit of a misleading song for indicating what the album is going to sound like, because there isn't really any other songs on the album that sounds like Never Never. But yeah, I think at the time when Never Never came out, I wasn't really into it, or at least I thought it was okay, something like that. But I would say I like that song more now compared to when the song first dropped or when the album first dropped. But yeah, some of my favorites, Pray For Me, Love and Math, What We Do, and Punishment Time. Yeah, those are probably my favorites on the album. But yeah, overall, actually, pretty good Korn album. But I think they do even better with the next album, and that album is The Serenity of Suffering. Absolutely loved this album when it came out. I mean, especially certain songs. I remember really loving songs like Next in Line and The Hating and When You're Not There and Take Me. Those are some songs that I remember really loving a lot when the album first came out. And of course, same with the song A Different World featuring Corey Taylor of Stone Sour and Slipknot. Slipknot, another band that I got into at a fairly young age, like, I don't know, 5th or 6th grade, somewhere around there. But yeah, this album, definitely pretty awesome. When it comes to their modern work, I think this is one of their better albums. And yeah, it was produced by Nick Raskulinix, who is a producer that I know worked with some other bands that I also enjoy. I know he worked with Trivium, another great band. And of course, if you haven't heard of Trivium, definitely check him out, especially if you like metalcore. But yeah, still an album that I think holds up all years later. I mean, I think it has some pretty good singles too, especially the song Insane, which is maybe my favorite of the singles. That or A Different World. It's a fight between one of those two, but overall, really good album from Korn. Then they do even more better with the next album, and that is The Nothing. So yeah, fairly dark album, and if you read into what happened around this time with Jonathan Davis around the release of this album, then you'll definitely understand. And yeah, when this album came out, I absolutely loved it. I mean, at the time, I thought it was their best since maybe Take a Look in the Mirror or Untouchables. I remember saying something like that, but either way, definitely a really great album. I mean, many great songs like Cold, You'll Never Find Me, Idiosyncrasy, which was a song that they did play when I saw them live. That was really cool. Did not expect that. But even the lesser known songs on here, or lesser popular songs, are really good, especially the Ringmaster and Gravity of Discomfort. Now, Gravity of Discomfort, kind of a basic, simple song, but at the same time, that's, for whatever reason, that's always been one of my personal favorites off the album. This Loss, another highlight off the album for me. But yeah, really great album from Korn for sure. And can maybe make the argument that this is maybe one of their best albums in general. And now we'll be moving to their latest album, Requiem. So at the time, I thought it was kind of a step down from The Nothing, but still overall a solid album. But after giving this album some recent re-listens, I think this album is better than I originally thought it was. Now, still, I wouldn't say it's as good as The Nothing or even Serenity of Suffering, but still not a bad album, though. Because I remember at the time seeing some reviews, opinions, some people calling it generic or typical Korn or lifeless, stuff like that. I remember hearing terms like that. But, of course, I did see other people praising the album, too, and liking the album. But, yeah, overall, pretty solid album from Korn. Again, when it comes to their later work, I wouldn't rank this as their best. Again, of their more recent output, but still, overall, another pretty solid album. Not a whole lot here in terms of filler, except for maybe 1 or 2 songs, but that's really it, though. Let the Dark Do the Rest is probably my favorite song on the album. I absolutely love that song. Start the Healing, another really great song. I remember when that song came out, as the first single, I was really into it, especially Jonathan Davis's vocals in that song. Worst Is On Its Way, another highlight on the album for me. If I had to choose a song that I think is kind of the underrated song on here, I'd probably say Penance to Sorrow. Maybe a song that doesn't bring a whole lot new to the table for the album, but still, for whatever reason, I've always really dug that song. Forgotten, another highlight off the album. Lost in the Grandeur, which I believe was one of the singles. I do also really enjoy that song. But yeah, overall, fairly solid Korn album. Again, not one of the best, but still solid. But yeah, that is my review of the Korn discography. Let me know your thoughts on my review. Do you agree or disagree with some of my views or opinions on certain albums? Let me know favorite or least favorite albums or songs from the band and all the good stuff. But anyways, thanks for watching. Please leave a comment and a like. Subscribe. Have a nice day and take care, guys.